At my daughter-in-law's baby shower, she suggested a toast. She said, "When the old lady moves to the nursing home, the fourth room will become the baby's new bedroom." The atmosphere turned icy cold the moment I revealed the DNA test results of the little one. I am glad you are here. Stay with me until the end of my story and tell me which city you are watching from so I know how far my voice has traveled. I held the delicate teacup tightly between my fingers, my knuckles pale from squeezing it too hard. The stunning baby shower decorations, which I had spent 3 days preparing, now seemed to mock me. Soft pastel blue balloons, carefully chosen floral arrangements, and the handmade sign that read, "Welcome, little one," all felt like a monument to my naivety. When the old lady moves to the nursing home, the fourth room will become the baby's bedroom. Olivia's words lingered in the air. She was still holding up her champagne glass, her smile barely hiding disdain. The living room that had been my home for 43 years fell into a chilling silence. 20 pairs of eyes darted between Olivia's arrogant expression and my frozen face. I am Rose Bennett, 65 years old, and I had just been erased from my own future by a woman barely half my age. What hurt the most was not her cold cruelty, or even the assumption I would soon be locked away somewhere. No, what truly broke me was my son David's reaction. He laughed. My only son burst out laughing. Facing the thought of being discarded like an old piece of furniture, Mom still had plenty of life left to give, she finally said. However, those words came too late, empty and hollow. Her arm remained tightly wrapped around Olivia's waist, forming a united front against me. I forced a strained smile, knowing that everyone has to make plans somehow. My voice sounded steady, though inside I was crumbling. 4 decades of teaching English literature at high school had trained me to keep my composure, even in the midst of humiliation. The party went on with stilted conversations. My friend Marissa squeezed my arm as she passed by on her way to the table. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "Of course," I lied. For the rest of the afternoon, I moved like an automaton, playing the perfect hostess. I cut the cake, served the tea, complimented the presents, all while Olivia's words echoed relentlessly in my mind. When the old lady goes to the nursing home, I caught pitying glances from friends who had known me before David was born, who stood by my side when Frank passed away 3 years ago. Their silent sympathy hurt almost as much as Olivia's cruelty. After everyone left, I spent an hour cleaning, brushing off David's half-hearted offers to help. Olivia had retreated to the guest room, complaining about pregnancy fatigue. My son stood by the kitchen door. "Mom, I thought Olivia was just talking, right?" he said. I interrupted her by handing a garbage bag into her hands. "Please take this out." When at last the house fell silent and I went back to my 4th floor, the one Olivia already pictured turned into a nursery filled with diapers. I sat down in front of the vanity and looked at myself truly. The wrinkles around my eyes seemed to have deepened even more this night. My silver hair, which Frank used to call angel threads, now appeared dull and gray. Had I really become this? A burden waiting to be moved aside. I opened the drawer where I kept Frank's belongings, his glasses, his pocket watch, a card he gave me on our last anniversary before cancer took him. It said, "You, my Rose, the strongest woman I have ever known." That was what everyone said after Frank's death. "She is so strong," they commented at the funeral. "She is handling it so well." No one saw the nights I spent hugging my pillow or the mornings when, out of habit, I brewed 2 cups of coffee. After losing him, I focused entirely on being the perfect mother and future grandmother. I offered my home to David and Olivia when they mentioned wanting to save for something bigger. I had redecorated the 4th floor guest room just for them. I started cooking Olivia's favorite dishes, although she always found some fault in them. I put so much effort into being helpful, into not being a burden. And this was my reward, being humiliated openly and treated like an object, about to expire instead of a person. I caught a glimpse of Frank's clock. He always told me I was too lenient, too ready to put others before myself. Rose used to say, "You need to learn to stand up for yourself more." The tears I had held back all day finally spilled over. But as I wiped them away, something inside me shifted. A spark ignited where there had only been pain before. I thought about how Olivia had been acting in recent months. The whispered phone calls, unexplained absences, the way she changed the subject every time I entered a room. At first, I blamed pregnancy hormones, but now I wondered if there was something else going on. I recalled the strange man who came for her last week, an envelope he snatched from my hands before I could see the sender. I also remembered how nervous she became when her phone rang during dinner 2 nights ago, and how she went outside to answer it. The more I thought about it, the more certain I was that Olivia was hiding something. Whatever it was, I was determined to find out. I might be 65 years old, but I was not done living. There was no way I would go to a nursing home without a fight. I dried my tears and looked at myself in the mirror again. This time I saw something else in my eyes. Resolve. When the old lady moves to the nursing home. Olivia's words echoed once more, but this time, instead of pain, they stirred a calm determination. I was not going anywhere. If my daughter-in-law thought she could kick me out of my own home, out of my son's life, she was about to learn a crucial lesson about underestimating Rose Bennett. The morning after the baby shower, I woke up with a mission. My humiliation had transformed overnight into determination. I moved through my morning routine with a different energy, seeing the house come alive through fresh eyes. David left early for work, kissing Olivia at the door and barely tossing me a distracted, "See you tonight, Mom." I noticed how she changed as soon as he left. Her sugary smile vanished, her posture eased, as if she could finally shed a heavy mask. "I'm going out for a while," Olivia announced without even looking at me, grabbing her purse. "Don't wait for me for lunch. Doctor's appointment." I asked casually, stirring my tea. She hesitated just a moment longer than expected. "Yes. A routine checkup." I nodded without saying anything else, but as she left, I noticed something strange. She was wearing heels in her 7th month of pregnancy, when she had been complaining nonstop about swollen feet. She chose to wear 8-centimeter heels to a medical appointment. For the next 2 weeks, I watched Olivia closely. The more I observed, the more inconsistencies I found. On Tuesday, she said she would meet her pregnancy support group, but came back with shopping bags from the other side of town. On Thursday, she called Patricia that same day to thank her for the baby shower gift. She mentioned she'd been working all day. "You seem distracted, Rose," Marissa told me as we sipped coffee during our weekly meeting. We had been friends for 30 years, having endured marriages, children, and now widowhood together. "Something is off with Olivia," I admitted. "She is hiding something." Marissa put down her cup. "Like what?" "I do not know yet, but she is always glued to her phone, sending messages to someone. When David is around, she acts like the perfect expectant mother. But as soon as he leaves, she becomes someone else. Maybe it is just the pregnancy hormones," Marissa suggested. I shook my head. "It is more than that." Yesterday, I overheard her on the phone saying, "He suspects nothing," and when she saw me, she hung up immediately. Marissa's expression softened with concern. "Rose, are you sure you are not looking for trouble where there is none? Especially after what she said at the baby shower." "It is not about that," I insisted, even though we both knew part of it was connected. Something does not add up, and David sees nothing. Later that afternoon, while checking the mail, I found an envelope addressed to Olivia from a law firm. My fingers itched to open it, but I left it on the small table. When I heard her coming in, I started folding clothes. "You have mail," I said casually. She snatched the envelope. Her eyes barely widened. "Thank you," she murmured, quickly tucking it into her purse. That night, while David and Olivia were watching television, I excused myself and went up to the 4th floor. My conscience struggled against the nagging distrust inside me as I stood in front of her bedroom door. Then I recalled Olivia's cruel toast and the look of superiority on her face, which only strengthened my resolve. The fourth floor, where my guest room was located, was spotless except for Olivia's nightstand. I carefully opened the drawer. Inside, I found prenatal vitamins, hand cream, and a small black notebook I had never seen before. Flipping through it, I discovered several unfamiliar names and numbers. But one name appeared repeatedly: Javier K. I gently put everything back and left, my heart pounding in my chest. Back in my room, I turned on my computer. Years ago, David had set up a Facebook account for me, insisting I should keep up with technology, although I rarely used it. This time, I typed Olivia Bennett into the search bar. Her profile was filled with posts about her pregnancy and pictures with David. Nothing suspicious there. Then I checked her friends list and looked for Javier K. There he was, Javier Cortez. His profile picture showed a handsome man in his 30s. I opened his page and felt my breath catch. There, in a photo from 2 years ago, Javier and Olivia were embracing like a couple deeply in love. I kept scrolling through more pictures of them together over the years. The latest one was only 8 months old, taken just as Olivia announced her pregnancy. As I closed the laptop, my hands were shaking. Olivia had been with David for only 1.5 years. Those photographs suggested that her relationship with Javier had overlapped with my son's. The following morning, I waited for Olivia to leave for another one of her secretive meetings and called David at his workplace. "Mom, is everything okay?" he asked with a worried tone. "Everything's fine," I reassured him. "I just wanted to ask you something. Has Olivia ever mentioned someone named Javier Cortez?" A heavy silence settled on the line. After a moment, he replied, "Her ex-boyfriend. Why do you ask about him?" I chose my words cautiously. "I was just curious. She mentioned him briefly." "Well, they were together long before she met me, but that's all in the past." His voice tightened slightly. "Mom, I hope you're not trying to stir up trouble where there is none. Olivia is carrying your grandchild. Please try to support her." After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, twirling my wedding ring on my finger, a habit I had developed whenever I felt unsettled. David's words echoed in my mind. Old story. But what if it was not? That afternoon, while sorting through an old box of photos in the basement, I found a picture of myself at 30 years old, pregnant with David. Frank stood beside me, his hand gently resting on my swollen belly, his smile full of love. I traced his face with my fingertip, wishing he were here to give me advice. "What would you do, Frank?" I whispered into the empty fourth floor as if expecting a reply. My phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Bennett, this is Carla, from Dr. Lowe's office. Just confirming Olivia's appointment for tomorrow at 2 p.m. I glanced at the message, a wave of confusion washing over me. It gripped me deeply. Dr. Lowe was not Olivia's obstetrician. It was Dr. Patel. I had accompanied her to a visit just last month. With shaky fingers, I typed back, "Thank you for the reminder." I set the phone aside and watched as my suspicions began to solidify into something more concrete. Olivia was clearly hiding something large enough to lie about medical appointments, something connected to her ex-boyfriend, something that could influence my unborn grandchild. I thought about the letter from the law firm, the secretive calls, the mysterious meetings. A dreadful suspicion started to take shape in my mind, one that threatened not only my place in this home, but also the foundation of my son's marriage and the future of his family. I could not confront Olivia without proof, nor could I tell David about my doubts without risking our relationship. He had already made it clear whose side he would take tomorrow. I decided I would find out exactly what kind of doctor Olivia was seeing, and then I would know how far my daughter-in-law was willing to go to push me out of their lives. What secrets was she hiding from my son? The photograph of Frank. and I was watching myself from the table, reminding me of what a true marriage should entail: honesty, trust, and mutual respect. I owed it to David to uncover the truth, even if it shattered my heart, even if it also broke his. The next day, I was sitting in my car across the street from the medical building, my heart pounding in my chest. I kept telling myself this was not about desire, it was about protecting my child. Still, my hands trembled slightly as I gripped the steering wheel. Exactly at 1:45 p.m., Olivia's red SUV pulled into the parking lot. She stepped out wearing large sunglasses and a scarf wrapped around her hair. Despite the mild weather, even from afar, I could see how she glanced around before entering the building. The directory in the lobby listed Dr. Edward Lowe as a family law attorney, not a doctor. My doubts tightened like a cold knot in my stomach. I waited 30 minutes before approaching the receptionist, a young woman with understanding eyes. "I am Rose Bennett," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My daughter-in-law, Olivia Bennett, has an appointment with Mr. Lowe today. She was supposed to meet me, but I got delayed." The receptionist checked her computer. "Mrs. Bennett is with Mr. Lowe right now. Would you like to wait? It will not be long." Actually, I made an impulsive decision. "Could you please tell me which floor his office is on? I want to freshen up a bit before seeing her." "Third floor, suite 308, she replied. I thanked her and headed to the elevator with my heart pounding. I had no intention of barging into the lawyer's office. I just needed to verify that Olivia was truly there. Through the frosted glass of the cozy room number 308, I made out some distinguished figures. A man wearing a suit and a woman whose profile was unmistakably Olivia's. This was not a prenatal appointment. It was a meeting with a lawyer. As I turned to leave, the elevator doors opened and a tall man stepped out. My breath caught. I recognized him instantly from the photos on Facebook. Javier Cortez. I hid behind the corner, watching him approach Dr. Lowe's office and go inside. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, each one more unsettling than the last. That evening, while David and Olivia talked about colors for the baby's nursery, I remained silent, absent-mindedly playing with my dinner. The warm and cheerful family scene looked to me like a theatrical performance I was watching from the outside. "You're very quiet today, Mom," David remarked, finally noticing my silence. I forced a smile. "I'm just tired." Olivia yawned dramatically. "I understand. Creating a life is exhausting." She caressed her belly. "I think I'll go to bed early." No sooner had she left when David leaned toward me. "Mom, are you okay? You've been acting strange lately." For a moment, I thought about telling him everything. The fake medical appointment, the meeting with the lawyer, Javier Cortez's sudden appearance. But the words stuck in my throat. I needed to find out more before possibly destroying my son's marriage. I assured him I was fine, just old lady stuff. He grimaced. About what Olivia said at the baby shower. "You know she was joking, right? No one wants to send you to a nursing home." I studied my son's face, the boy I had raised alone after Frank's death, the man who now seemed like a stranger. What if he was not kidding? David sighed. "Mom, Olivia loves this house. She thinks it is the perfect place to raise our baby, but that does not mean we want to get rid of you." "Really?" I whispered before he could answer. His phone rang with a message. He checked it, and his expression shifted slightly. "A work emergency." "I have to make a call." He squeezed my shoulder before leaving. "Talk later?" "Yes." I watched him walk away as doubt gnawed inside me. I was wrong about everything. I had been making up conspiracy theories over a trivial comment. The next morning, I made a decision. I called the one person I knew would help me without judgment. Catalina Suarez answered with a firm voice. "Catalina, this is Rose Bennett." "Rose, long time no see. How are you?" Catalina and I had been teachers at Hidalgo Institute for 20 years before she retired and opened her private investigation agency. She specialized in domestic cases, mainly infidelities and hidden assets. I needed her help. I explained the situation to him as briefly as I could. 2 days later, we met at a cafe across the city. Catalina handed me a manila envelope with a serious expression. "You were right to be suspicious," she said. Olivia had been meeting with Javier Cortez regularly for several months. The previous week, they were seen together at a hotel. That law firm specializes in custody agreements and paternity cases. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs of Olivia and Javier together. The images had dates showing them entering a hotel, holding hands in a park, and hugging outside the lawyer's office. The most recent was taken only 3 days earlier. "There is more," Catalina added gently. "Olivia had been redirecting money from your son's accounts into another account only she could access. She was also looking into the value of your house." "My house?" I repeated in disbelief. There was a document inside, a draft agreement Javier had signed giving up his parental rights in exchange for a significant sum of money. Everything fit together with a clarity that churned my stomach. The baby belonged to Javier, not David. Olivia intended to use my son as financial support while maintaining her relationship with Javier and keeping my house. The home I shared with Frank and where I raised David was part of her scheme. "What are you planning to do?" Catalina asked. I put the photos back in the envelope with my mind racing 1,000 miles an hour. "I need one more piece of information," I said finally. "I must be absolutely certain about the baby." Rose Bennett nodded, understanding. "Nowadays, DNA testing is straightforward, but you would need samples from both David and the baby." "After the birth," I said, feeling my resolve harden. "I will wait until after the baby is born." The trip home was a blur. I could not stop seeing Olivia's satisfied face at the baby shower, hearing her cruel words about sending the old woman to a nursing home. She had planned to push me out from the beginning, take over my house, and use my child. And David, blinded by her manipulation, either could not or would not see it. When I arrived, I found Olivia on the baby's 4th floor, what used to be Frank's office. She was guiding David as he assembled a crib. "This room is very small," she said. "Why don't we turn your mother's room into the nursery instead?" David looked uneasy. "We have already talked about this, Liv." "That is Mom's room for now," he murmured without seeing me standing in the doorway. I stepped back silently, clutching Rose's envelope to my chest. Now I understood everything. It was not just a careless remark or a casual comment about a quarter of the baby. It was a cold, calculated plan to take everything from me. My child, my home, my dignity. I locked myself in my 4th floor room. On my desk was a photo of Frank holding newborn David, his face glowing with happiness and pride. What would he think of the man David had become? What advice would he give me? I opened the envelope once again, carefully examining the evidence of Olivia's betrayal. I already had what I needed to expose her lies and shield David from her manipulation. Yet the timing was critical. I had to wait for the perfect moment after the baby was born when I could prove beyond any doubt that the child was not David's. For now, I would watch and wait. I would protect my home and my son, and when the time came, I would be prepared. Nobody was going to send Rose Bennett to a nursing home. No one would take away my house or exploit my son. Olivia had no idea who she was dealing with. 2 months passed like thick honey. I existed in my own home like a ghost, witnessing Olivia's belly grow alongside her web of lies. Each day brought fresh proof of her deceit. Whispered phone calls stopped abruptly whenever I entered a room. Mysterious meetings happened more frequently, each one hinting more brazenly about rearranging the house once the baby arrived. David remained oblivious to everything. He worked longer hours as the due date neared. He had just been promoted to senior accounts manager, something Olivia celebrated with expensive champagne, though she sipped sparkling cider. putting on a grand show of sacrificing for the baby. My son's future was being built on shifting sands, and I was the only one who knew. "Have you thought about what you will do afterward?" Marissa asked during our weekly coffee meetup. She was the only person besides Catalina who I knew she was fully aware of the extent of my doubts. After that, I stirred my tea, avoiding her gaze. "After you tell David the truth," I set my spoon aside. "If I am right, everything changes. If I am wrong..." I could not finish the sentence. If I were mistaken, I would ruin my relationship with my son for nothing. "You are not wrong," Marissa said firmly. "Catalina's evidence is solid. The question is what will happen next. What would come next arrives sooner than expected." David called me from the hospital. His voice shook between panic and excitement. "Mom, it is happening now. We are at the memorial. You can bring her," he said. The hospital bag is by the door. While I gathered Olivia's things, a small cosmetics pouch slipped out of the larger bag. Inside were her prenatal vitamins, a lip balm, and a folded document. My hands trembled as I opened it. Another draft, signed by Javier Cortez, updated with specific financial terms and a visitation rights clause. My suspicions had been right all along. The baby was not David's. At the hospital, I found David pacing nervously in front of the delivery room, his face pale but glowing. "How is she?" I asked, handing him the bag, hurrying forward. "The doctor says it will not be long now." Suddenly, he hugged me. "I am going to be a dad, Mom." My heart broke for him. "Yes," I whispered, unable to say more. Hours later, amidst a whirlwind of nurses and the beeping of monitors, Olivia gave birth to a baby boy, 3 kilograms and 400 grams. She insisted it was David's blood flowing through him. My son cried as he held his child, unaware that the child might not be his. While Olivia rested, exhausted after labor, David proudly showed me my grandson. "We will name him Frank," he whispered quietly after his father. The knife of betrayal sank even deeper. They had taken away my home, my place in the family, and now the very name of Frank. Everything built on lies. I held the baby, examining his tiny features. He had Olivia's nose and mouth, yet his eyes, something there reminded me of the pictures I had seen of Javier Cortez. "He is beautiful," I managed to say after David left to share the news with his friends. I approached the hospital crib just as the nurse finished a routine blood extraction from the baby's heel for the newborn screening. The gauze, stained with a small patch of dried blood, lay on the table ready to be discarded. My heart pounding, I slipped it into my purse when no one was watching. That night, I called Catherine softly. "I need your help once again," explaining about the baby's birth. "I have a sample from the baby. How can I get one from David?" Catherine's voice was heavy. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this, Rose? Once you know the truth, there is no turning back." "I am certain," I thought, as I reflected on David's tears of joy and Olivia's proud smile when they announced they would use Frank's name. "I need to protect my son." The next morning, I arrived at the hospital with bagels and coffee for David, who had spent the night sitting in a chair by Olivia's bedside. "You look exhausted," I said, handing him the coffee. "Why don't you go home and take a shower?" "I will stay with Olivia and the baby." David hesitated but then nodded with gratitude. "Thank you, Mom. I won't be long." After he left, I watched Olivia sleep with the baby in the nearby crib. Was she calm and content? A woman who believed she had pulled off her deception flawlessly. When I got home, I gathered the things I needed. David's hairbrush with strands of his dark hair still caught among the bristles, and the gauze stained with little Frank's blood. I packed them carefully following Catherine's instructions and sent the urgent package to the laboratory she recommended. The results would come in 3 days, the technician assured me when I called to arrange the test. 3 more days alone with this truth, watching my son fall deeper in love with a child who might not be his. The days slipped by like a whisper, filled with hospital visits, flower deliveries, and preparations to bring the baby home. Suddenly, Olivia started acting attentive, even almost friendly toward me. A complete turnaround in her behavior compared to before the birth. Rose asked me gently the day before my discharge, "Could you look after Frank while I take a shower?" The nurse showed me how to swaddle him the way he liked. I held the little bundle, surprised by her change in attitude. Later, as he settled into the hospital bed with his hair freshly combed, he gave me a smile. "David and I have been talking," she said. "We believe you should stay in your room after all." I felt immense relief until she added, "At least until Frank sleeps through the night. Then we can reconsider." The familiar anger burned low and steady in my stomach. Nothing had changed. She was still planning to get rid of me. She had simply adjusted the timetable. That night, an email arrived from the testing service. Results available. My hands trembled as I clicked the link and entered the secure password Catalina had given me. The clinical language was cold and precise. The alleged father is excluded as the biological parent of the child tested. This conclusion is based on the non-matching alleles observed in the previously listed DNA loci. The probability of paternity is 0%. I stayed frozen, staring at the screen. Even though I had suspected it, seeing the scientific confirmation was devastating. David was not Frank's father. Olivia had completely deceived him. I carefully printed the results onto the paper and slipped them into my purse. Tomorrow, David will bring Olivia and the baby home. They are about to start their life as a family built on Olivia's lies. As I was getting ready to sleep, my phone buzzed with a message from David. "I cannot wait for you to see Frank on his 4th morning. Olivia says thank you for being so supportive." I left the phone unanswered. Supportive. That was what they believed. They had no clue about what awaited them tomorrow. I stayed awake for hours rehearsing what I would say. How could I present the proof? Would David believe me? Would he hate me for ruining his happiness? Someday he would thank me for saving him from a life with a woman who had betrayed him so harshly. Morning came far too soon. I heard David's car park outside the front door. The door opened. Olivia's voice was soothing the baby. "Welcome home, little Frank. This is your home now." I took a deep breath and touched the results in my pocket for courage before going down the stairs to meet them. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. I had imagined this moment for weeks, the confrontation, the revelation, the consequences. But nothing prepared me to see my son cross the threshold carrying that tiny bundle. His face was glowing with happiness and pride as he showed the baby the house where he himself grew up. "Welcome home, little Frank," David whispered, carrying the baby toward the living room with Olivia following closely behind, her hand gently shielding the baby carrier. "Let me help you with the bags," I offered, my voice sounding surprisingly steady despite the DNA results burning a hole in my pocket. "Thank you." Rose smiled Olivia with a cloying sweetness that churned my stomach. Ever since the baby was born, she'd been unusually kind to me, undoubtedly part of her act to sustain the deception. As she carried her travel bag upstairs, I noticed her phone screen light up several times with message notifications. I couldn't help but glimpse the name at the top. Javier K., downstairs. David had settled on the couch with the baby, while Olivia occupied herself straightening cushions and blankets. "Mom, come sit with us," he called out. "I think the baby has your eyes." The irony of his words hit me like a blow. I sank into the armchair opposite them, watching that scene of domestic happiness crafted entirely from lies. David started saying, but I hesitated. "How do you begin a conversation like this? I need to talk to you both about something serious." "Can it wait, Mom?" David asked, without taking his eyes off the baby's face. "We're quite tired, aren't we?" I responded firmly. Can it not wait? Something in my tone made them both look up. Olivia's eyes squinted slightly, just revealing a flicker of fatigue. "What's wrong?" David asked, finally giving me his full attention. I took a deep breath before speaking. "I want you to understand that I love you, David. Everything I have done was to protect you." "Protect you from what?" His face clouded with confusion. I answered her, staring directly. "From Olivia's lies." Olivia's expression immediately hardened. "What are you talking about?" "I know everything, Olivia. About Javier Cortez. About the lawyer. About the money you have been moving. About David's accounts." I turned to my son and added, "I also know about the baby." David's brow furrowed. "Mom, what are you saying? That baby is not yours." "David." The words hung between us, impossible to take back. Olivia let out a dry laugh. "That is ridiculous." "Rose, I think you need help. This obsession you have with destroying our family—" "I have proof," I interrupted, pulling out the folded laboratory results from my pocket. "I had a DNA test done." David's face lost all color. "What did you do?" he exclaimed, standing up abruptly and clutching the baby tightly. "How could you do something like that behind my back?" "Because she has been lying to you," I answered, trying to stay calm. "She has been seeing Javier Cortez throughout their entire marriage. They were together when she got pregnant." "That is insane," Olivia said. But I saw her hand tremble slightly when she tried to hold the baby. "David, don't listen to her," she said. "You are jealous because we are building our own family. She cannot stand not being the center of your world anymore." I ignored her and handed the lab report to David. "Read it yourself. The results are clear." David glanced at the paper, but did not take it. "I do not need to read anything. This is my son." "No, David," I whispered. "He is not." Olivia stepped forward to come between us. "I will not let you ruin this family with your paranoid delusions. If all this is because of that silly toast at the baby shower, get over it. It was just a joke. One joke," I repeated, feeling anger rise through my chest, as if your marriage were a joke, as if the vows you made to my son were a joke. "Mom, please stop," David begged, his voice cracking. "You are upset because you think we want to push you away, but this has gone too far." "I have more proof," I said, pulling an envelope from Marissa's bag. "Photographs of Olivia with Javier, financial records. A draft agreement in which Javier gives up his parental rights in exchange for money. Your money, David." Olivia's face twisted with rage. "You investigated me? You are sick." "Look at the evidence, David," I insisted, spreading the photos across the coffee table. "Look at the dates. See her with him while she was pregnant with your supposed son." David's eyes blinked, refusing at first. But finally he looked at the pictures. Olivia and Javier leaving a lawyer's office, holding hands in a park, entering a hotel together. Their expressions shifted from disbelief to growing horror. "These could be old photos," she whispered weakly, but I saw doubt creeping into her mind. "The dates are here," I pointed out. "And here is the agreement I found in your hospital bag." I unfolded the document bearing Javier's signature. He was relinquishing his parental rights in exchange for payment. Money that would come from you, David. Silence filled the room. The baby started to squirm in David's arms, as if sensing the tension. "Olivia," David's voice was barely audible. "Tell me this isn't true." Olivia's face changed. Anger gave way to calculation as she realized denial was useless. "Do you want the truth?" She took the baby from David's arms. "If Frank is Javier's biological son, then we made an agreement," David interrupted with hollow words. "You and Javier made a deal affecting my life, leaving me to raise another man's child without knowing. It was the best choice," Olivia insisted, Javier wasn't ready to be a father, but he did not want me to have an abortion. You wanted a family. It was the perfect solution." "The perfect solution," David repeated, pale as a ghost. "Using me as a human ATM while you kept seeing him, letting me believe this baby was mine." He looked back at the photos, focusing on the most recent ones where Olivia was clearly pregnant. "You kept sleeping with him while carrying his child inside you and being married to me." "It is complicated," Olivia said, her voice growing firmer. "But the fact remains that now we are a family. Frank needs a father, and that father is you. DNA does not matter." David looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. DNA does not matter. The truth does not matter. "Did you ever love me?" "Of course," she responded, yet her eyes drifted away from his. "I still love you, but you have to understand." "I understand perfectly," David interrupted her. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a pain that tore at my soul. "You always knew, didn't you? That's why you've been acting so strangely?" I nodded. I suspected it after the baby shower, the way she talked about getting rid of me. It was not just about making space for the baby. It was about taking over this house, your money, using you. David sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I cannot believe this is happening." Olivia tightened her hold on the baby, her attitude shifting from defiance to calculation. "David, think carefully about what you are doing. This child is your son in every way that counts. We can get through this. Your mother is trying to divide us because she fears losing her place in your life." I started to object, but David lifted his gaze. His expression suddenly cleared. "No, Olivia, she was protecting me from you." He stood up, stepping away from her. "I want you to leave this house tonight." "What?" Olivia exclaimed, stunned. "You cannot be serious. Where am I supposed to go with a newborn, with Javier?" David spoke with cold detachment. "Since you all planned this together," Olivia hissed, "you are making a huge mistake, her facade completely falling apart. You will regret this. Both of you will." She grabbed the baby's things with sharp, sudden movements, while David stood frozen, as if in shock. I moved closer to my son, gently placing my hand on his arm. "I am so sorry, David," I whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." He covered my hand with his own. "You did not hurt me. It was your mother." As Olivia hurried upstairs to pack her belongings, David turned to me, his eyes clouded with pain. "How am I supposed to move on after all this?" I squeezed his hand, wishing I could ease his suffering. Day after day, together. Olivia came back with a loosely closed suitcase and the baby secured in a carrier. At the door, she turned around one last time, her face twisted with fury. "This is far from over. You will hear from my lawyer and you as well," David answered, his voice stronger than I expected, "about the money you stole, the fraud you committed." After the door slammed shut behind her, the house was filled with heavy silence. David stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door, his shoulders slumping in defeat. The fourth floor above, which had been the first office of Frank, then briefly Frank's baby's room, was now empty. A monument to Olivia's betrayal. The future we once dreamed of disappeared in an instant, replaced by uncertainty and pain. Yet when I saw my son straighten his shoulders and walk away from the door, I felt a glimmer of hope. The truth, no matter how painful, had freed him from a life built on lies. 6 months can transform everything. The harsh winter that had defined our lives after Olivia's departure slowly gave way to a shy spring of healing, and I rebuilt. The legal battles were swift and brutal. Olivia had indeed left with Javier, who refused to take any responsibility for the sudden fatherhood or the chaos she had caused. She hired an aggressive lawyer demanding child support despite the DNA evidence. However, Catalina's documents proved key, especially the financial records showing how Olivia had systematically drained David's accounts. In the end, the judge was unmoved by Olivia's theatrical performance. "Miss Bennett," the judge said, peering over her glasses, "this court does not reward deceit." The case was dismissed, leaving Olivia alone to face the consequences of her deception. I found myself in what once was Frank's office, then briefly Olivia's, intended as the nursery, watching David apply the final brushstrokes of paint. The warm terracotta shade brightened the fourth floor, turning it into a fresh space filled with hope. "What do you think?" He stepped back to admire his creation and asked, "Is it perfect?" I answered, "Yes, it is perfect. Frank would have loved it." David smiled, a genuine smile, the kind that lights up the eyes, something I hadn't seen in him for months. "Do you think this can work as an art studio?" The idea of having an art studio had come from him. "Mom, you always wanted to paint," he told me one night while going through my old photographs. "You gave up everything to raise me when Dad passed away. It's time for you to have something just for yourself." I hadn't touched a brush in 30 years since Frank's cancer diagnosis shattered our plans for me to study art. Once David started school, life got in the way, as it often does, and dreams were set aside to handle urgent matters. But now, at 65 years old, I was finally returning to the love of my youth. "It is more than I ever imagined," I confessed, running my hand over the easel David had set up the night before. "Are you sure you don't want this space for yourself? This is your home, too." David put down his brush and looked me straight in the eyes. "Mom, this has always been your home." I was the one who forgot that for a while. The months after Olivia's passing were filled with painful revelations. David uncovered more evidence of her deceit. Hidden credit cards, loans in his name, plans to sell the house she had secretly researched. I still cannot believe how blind I was. His expression shifted, clouding for a moment. I gently touched his arm. He was incredibly persuasive. He knew exactly what you wanted to hear and what I needed to understand. He added softly, "A family, a future." He shook his head. He was so desperate to build something of his own that he failed to see what was right in front of him. "Everyone makes mistakes," I said. "The important part is to learn from them." And David had undoubtedly learned after Olivia. He focused on rebuilding his finances, his career, and his relationship with me. He temporarily moved back to his old fourth-floor apartment, though we both knew he would eventually find his own place again. For now, we were healing together, rediscovering the closeness that had united us before Olivia came between us. "The gardening club ladies will be coming later," I reminded him. "Marissa will bring her famous lemon bars." David smiled. "I know. That is why I made sure to finish painting early." He gathered his things. "I have some work calls to make, but I will come down for dinner." After he left, I stayed alone in my new studio, marveling at how life can twist and bring back what was lost. 6 months ago, I was a burden in my own home, someone to be tolerated until the right moment came to send me to a care facility. Now I was reclaiming my space, not just in the house, but in my own life. The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. Through the window, I saw Marissa's car at the entrance, accompanied by several others. The gardening club had expanded over the past few months, growing from our original 5 members to nearly 15 women, all over 60 years old. Each one brought her own unique story. It all began innocently after Olivia's situation became known. The neighbors started to come closer. Some brought casseroles, others just coffee and conversation. Many shared experiences of toxic relationships involving children, controlling in-laws, manipulators, and indifferent husbands among them. I found a support I never imagined possible. During one of our early gatherings, Elvira declared that we had been invisible for far too long. At 72 years old, she had just left her husband after discovering he had been making her question her memory for years. while having an affair with a much younger woman. "It is time for us to reclaim our space," she said. That idea struck a deep chord in all of us. The gardening club became much more than discussions about plants and pruning techniques. It turned into a sanctuary where women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s could speak openly about taking back their lives, their homes, and their very identity. I opened the door, and there was Marissa, carrying the lemon bars she had promised. She was accompanied by Elvira and our newest member, Beatrice, a retired judge especially interested in our legal rights as older women. Rose Marissa hugged me warmly. The others were just behind her. Elvira brought those gardening catalogs you requested. As the women arrived, filling my home with laughter and lively voices, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. These friendships had come as an unexpected gift, emerging from the ruins left by Olivia's betrayal. Later, gathered in the glassed-in porch with cups of tea in hand and garden plans spread out on the table, Beatrice tapped her cup with her spoon to get our attention. "Ladies, I have an announcement," she said with that natural authority she had never lost. "The community center has offered us space for weekly art classes. They are very impressed with our community garden project and wish to expand the collaboration." A wave of approval passed through the group. Our project, to transform an abandoned lot near the center into a blooming garden, had given us purpose during the harsh winter months. Rose continued, Beatrice turning to me. "We were hoping you might consider teaching some basic painting classes. David mentioned you were quite talented in your youth." I felt a mixture of pleasure and nervousness. I had not painted seriously in decades. Elvira dismissed my doubt with a gesture. "None of us have done even half the things we are doing now in decades. That is the point." Warm, genuine laughter filled the room. "I will think about it," I promised, already imagining what I could teach and how I might design classes for women like myself. They were discovering or rediscovering their creativity. As the afternoon drew to a close, the women began gathering their belongings. Marissa stayed behind to help me collect cups and dessert plates. "Do you look happy?" she remarked while watching me closely. Truly happy, I thought as I framed a cup. I am, I realized, not despite everything that happened, but because of it. If Olivia had not made that cruel toast at the baby shower, if she had not exposed her true nature so blatantly, perhaps I would have continued blurring myself in my own life, pleasing everyone while forgetting myself. Instead, I had reclaimed not only my home, but also my identity. I was painting again. I had meaningful friendships. My relationship with my son was healthier than ever. David appeared in the kitchen doorway, smiling at Marissa and me washing dishes. "Need help?" he asked. "Almost done," I assured him. "Marissa is staying for dinner. I thought we could try that new Thai recipe." "Sounds great," he said while starting to set the table, gathering plates and cutlery, softly whistling. A surge of pride welled up inside me. He was healing too, growing stronger, learning to set boundaries. Olivia had almost destroyed him, but surviving her betrayal, he had uncovered his own resilience. After Marissa left and we finished cleaning, David and I settled on the back porch. Watching the fireflies begin to glow as the evening settled in was magical. Frank and I had shared countless nights like this, dreaming side by side and mapping out our future together. I had just enrolled in a business management course, David said, breaking the comfortable silence. The one that will allow me to start my own agency. That sounds incredible, I replied, genuinely happy. He had talked for years about quitting his corporate job, yet Olivia always discouraged him, preferring the security of a steady paycheck. "And I am seeing someone," he added carefully. "Just coffee dates so far, nothing serious. But it feels different, real and grounded. I would love to meet her," I said. "Whenever you want," he nodded. "This time I am taking it slow, really getting to know her." He turned to me with a serious look. "And I promise you, Mom, the next time someone suggests toasting to sending you to a nursing home, I will be the first to kick them out." I laughed out loud, surprised by how that painful memory no longer held any power over me. I will hold you to that. As the night wrapped around us, I reflected on the journey we had traveled since that baby shower. The pain, the betrayal, the rebuilding, all of it had led us to this calm moment of fulfillment. Olivia had tried to erase me, to remove me from my son's life and take over my home, but without realizing it, she gave me the push I needed to reclaim my voice, my space, my identity. At 65 years old, far from being cast aside or forgotten, a new chapter was beginning, filled with creativity, friendship, meaning, and joy. It was one where I no longer shrank myself to fit the dreams of others. David pointed to the sky where the first stars were beginning to shine and said, "Do you remember how Dad taught me the constellations?" I answered warmly, "Of course I do." At that moment, I felt Frank's presence so clearly, as if he were sitting right there beside us, approving everything that had happened and everything yet to come. The last light of the day faded away, but I was not afraid of the darkness. Tomorrow would bring fresh starts, my first painting in decades, perhaps my acceptance to teach at the community center, certainly more gardening plans with my friends. Olivia's harsh toast had not defined me. On the contrary, it set me free to be more fully myself than I had been in years, and for that, paradoxically, I would always be grateful. My name is Rose Bennett, and if there is one thing I am sure of after all I have endured, it is that sometimes life must smash you into 1,000 pieces so that you can finally find the strength to gather only the fragments that truly matter. Olivia wanted to erase me, take everything away, turn me into a burden in my own home, in my son's life. But her betrayal, instead of breaking me, forced me to face myself in the mirror, to ask who I really was when I no longer lived to please others. I have learned that it is never too late to reclaim your voice, regardless of how many years have passed or how much pain you have endured. You can always begin again. Wiser, stronger, and more authentic. Today, from this cozy corner that I have made my own, surrounded by brushes, cups of tea, and the sound of genuine laughter, I want to tell you that no one has the right to diminish you or turn you into a forgotten project in the basement of their own ambitions. If I could rise at the age of 65, you can do it too, no matter your age, wounds, or fears. The betrayal by Olivia did not mark the end of my story. It was, ironically, the start of my rebirth. Now, I want to ask you, the one reading this, if you were in my place, discovering someone was trying to take away your home, your dignity, or even your family, what would you do? Would you stay silent to avoid conflict or raise your voice to protect what is rightfully yours? Tell me from where you are reading this. I am eager to know how far this voice, which refused to fade away, can reach.